All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass Instant Reaction Show. My name is Rick Butler, joined right here, Ryan Shumpert. We're up here in the booth at Neyland Stadium, a little bit different. Normally last year, we did our post-game reactions via podcast only. Well, now we've got the video component to add along with it, like we've kind of been doing so far. So if you haven't been checking out our video podcast over on YouTube, make sure you go ahead and do that as we bring you all the latest news from the Tennessee football season. But Ryan, how you doing, man? A little bit different setup for us, but otherwise back in the same place doing the same thing.
Yeah, doing well. Glad to be back and glad to have some real tangible football to talk about here on the first Saturday of the season.
I couldn't agree more. Fall camp is fun for those first couple practices to get back out there on the field, see some of the new storylines, but it all starts to blend in with each other, right? And you get to this first game day. There's so much more to talk about after the game. Now, granted, for today, a 66-point victory, right? So it's still sort of narrow about all the observations and breakdowns that we can make, but we're certainly going to do so today. Normally, we have our third member, our third man, Jack Foster. He's not going to be with us in the podcast today. So, Ryan, just you and I.
Just the two of us? Yeah, no, hopefully I'll have Jack back. We'll definitely have him back in the middle of this week, previewing North Carolina State, and hopefully have him back next weekend, talking about a big game for the Vols in Charlotte.
There we go. Well, let's talk about the big game for Tennessee today right here in Neyland Stadium. It was a packed house as fans were excited to see. Some of those fans might have tried to beat the heat around halftime and left the stadium, but we totally understand. 69-3 is your final score. Number 15 Tennessee gets off to the right start to the season with, again, a 66-point victory. Ryan, a lot of different ways that we can go with this, but 45-0 at halftime. Tennessee's offense and especially the starters dominated this game. Yeah. We're going to be talking about Nico, but I believe it was 7 straight scoring drives to start off the game. You are going to find success when that's happening.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was just...
Or maybe I should say you're finding success if that's happening. It's already happening.
Yeah, 100%. And 24-0 at the end of the first quarter. Just it felt like slow burn's almost a weird word to use to describe it because it's Tennessee's offense, but it just felt like it was all very steady. A lot of quick drives. I mean, to go along with that, Chattanooga didn't get cross midfield in the first half. I think they had one first down, a couple of drives, but a lot of 3 and outs, and then Tennessee getting the ball back, and a handful of drives a little bit slower. You know, obviously a couple quick touchdown drives. They had the 2-play touchdown drive where they hit first Chris Brazell over the middle, and then Dante Thornton for, I think, a 36-yard touchdown pass. So Tennessee, it was just slow and steady as they poured it on Chattanooga in the first half. And obviously, and Josh Heupel talked about some after the game, not quite the end of the first half they were looking for offensively with a 2-minute drill that kind of went awry because of a shot block and then also Nico taking a sack. But besides that, you know, not too much that you could really nitpick with Tennessee's first-team offense today.
No, I wouldn't say so. Tennessee starts out the game with a touchdown on their first drive. Dylan Sampson punches it into the end zone for his first of 3. And then you look at that next drive by Chattanooga, that was the fumble from Tyree West. I almost forget right now here a couple hours after how quickly that was into the game. So Tennessee bounces back. Not really bounces back, but the ball bounces their way. They pick it up. They score just about 1 minute later, 14-0. And then about less than a minute after that, Tennessee once again scores. Nico Iamaleava connects with Ethan Davis over the middle of over the middle of the field. So 7 or 8 minutes in this game, Tennessee already put up 3 touchdowns on the board and had a turnover forced by the defense.
Yeah, for sure. And it was, you know, they had the 4th down. It almost kind of felt a little bit like the Virginia game last year, where the opening drive of the game, they had a 4th down that they converted down inside the 10-yard line. I think this one was 4th and 2 at like the 5 or 6 yard line. Yeah. They just lined up and ran it right out Chattanooga and then did the same thing again to score a touchdown. So it was maybe not super explosive on the first drive. I thought they very much maybe kind of tried to ease Nico into the game, which makes sense. I think they threw 3 passes and had like 7 runs on that first drive of the game, and one of the passes was the little shovel option to Dylan Sampson. So Dylan Sampson had 8 touches on what I believe was a 10-play touchdown drive to start the game. And, you know, Chattanooga didn't put up any sort of resistance. I mean, it was a 38.5-point spread. Tennessee was up by 38, like midway through the second quarter. And, you know, a little bit of success for Chattanooga's offense in the second half, but really not much. I mean, it was a very, very dominant effort. And, you know, it's what you expect. It's kind of like we said in our video down on the field after the game. You learn more about a team like an SEC team winning these games for what goes bad and what you do what goes good. Not that a ton really went bad in this game, but even then, I mean, you think about it, Tennessee covered the point spread by 16 points. Like that's, shows just how well they played, and they did that without playing, their first team offense. Their starting quarterback didn't play at all in the second half.
They had the cover in the first half.
Yeah.
It was around 38, so 45-0 at half.
Uh-huh.
That was impressive. Ryan's absolutely right. It can be hard to take away things from this game. We talked a lot about how we were going to be looking at the secondary heading into this game. We wanted to see some of those rotations and what they would look like, who maybe would step up, but they really weren't tested that much. Now there's still things to break down. We talked about Boo Carter a little bit in our instant reaction video off the field. But I kind of want to go back to the first half a little bit, start there, and then we'll make our way through. I really like the way that Tennessee did a good job of getting their guys comfortable in rhythm in the offense right off the bat. That's something I'm really watching for this year. But they get the ball to Chris Brazell, I believe, first play of the game. Get the ball into his hands, a newcomer to Tennessee's team, a guy who you expect to be potentially an X factor. Get the ball in his hands, get him feeling comfortable. Then they did the same thing with Dante Thornton. And to me, man, whatever Dante Thornton, whatever kind of was working for him at the end of the year last year, he's really built on it. He talked after the game about he really made an effort to work on his mindset, how he just wanted to go out there. He wanted to play confident. He wanted to play free. He wanted to play loose. Kelsey Pope actually said during fall camp, I thought this was a really fascinating line. He said, Dante Thornton he's not trying to prove people wrong anymore. He's just trying to prove himself right. That's something that stuck with me for the last couple of weeks, and I think you can see that through the way he plays. So, I just like the way that Tennessee did a good job of getting their playmakers touches early into the game. Not a game that you necessarily need them to feel comfortable in early on to impact the final score of the game. This game is going to be a blowout one way or the other, but I like that they're getting this going to kind of build this season like this. Again, those are playmakers. Chris Brazell, Dante Thornton, guys who you believe are going to be X factors for this Tennessee team. I like the idea of getting them as comfortable as you can early into the season.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought Josh Heupel isn't one to disclose a lot or to talk in detail about a lot of stuff, but I thought the most interesting thing he said today by far was that he was talking about Dante Thornton last year, and he said, he's like, we don't really talk about scholarship losses much and try not to make a big deal out of it, but we typically decided to take our lumps at scholarship spots, at the skill position spots, which, obviously makes sense and goes into why Tennessee rotated so little, at least in part over the last couple of years at the receiver spot.
Right.
And he said that we were thin at slot last year, so we started Dante Thornton at slot. And I thought that was a really interesting, thought, because it wasn't necessarily how thin they were at slot that made me think that. It was a little bit of his skill set and the way Tennessee throws the ball deep out of the slot, and the fact that I thought, Squirrel White being such a smaller guy, you wondered how he'd hold up over the course of the season. So I thought that was really interesting, and then he kind of talked about the obvious stuff that when they moved him out wide in the middle of the season last year, before the Missouri game, that's when he started playing well. And it is kind of funny. His last catch last season, which I believe was his only touchdown, was that 45-yard or 45-ish yard touchdown against Missouri. His first catch this year was a 36-yard touchdown. So he's exciting.
He is. Exciting is a good word to put.
How the roles break. Tennessee continues to rotate a bunch of receiver. How all the roles kind of work out, I think, will be really interesting. But he seems like a potential big play guy. And funny train of thought here.
Okay.
Maybe not train of thought, but train of knowledge. So hopefully I give it the right a comparison that somebody made.
Put the locomotive on the track.
I heard the comparison from Chase Thomas, who I believe heard it from Ben McKee. But it was the fact that it was like Dante Thornton, or Tennessee just needs Dante Thornton to have like a Javonte Payton type season in 2021, where maybe not he's a guy that catches 60 passes over the course of the season, but the guy that can make some plays, be a big play guy. And if you remember, I believe it was 18 catches for Javonte Payton in 2021, 6 of them touchdowns. Could be off a little bit there. I know a third of his catches were touchdowns. Yeah. 3 catches today for Dante Thornton. 2 of them are touchdowns. One of them was a short touchdown, but it's kind of traded off because it's the longest catch of the day, which I believe a 59-yard gain on probably Nico Iamaleava's best throw.
Yeah, he set up, I believe it was Dylan Sampson, maybe just a couple of plays later. But
yeah, believe so.
I like that, and to kind of bounce off that a little bit, it's just the idea of downfield passing, right? It's something that you knew was very impactful in Tennessee's success in 2022. They kind of got away from it a little bit more last year, but it seems like Tennessee has the pieces. We've gone this far, however many minutes this is in, without talking about the quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? So factoring in the opponent, because that's obviously important to do. This wasn't an SEC defense that Nico faced, but I think it's hard not to really like what you saw from him. He commanded the pocket well, but his decision making was very well. His accuracy was very good. He looked poised in the pocket. He was able to be mobile at times. And again, I thought just some of those strikes to the outside, some of the way that he was able to pick apart the sidelines, or some of the ways that he was able to find the right touch to get the ball over the middle of the defense into that sort of seam area for maybe one of his tight ends or somebody else, a slot receiver running that way. I really liked his command of the offense. I thought he was able to do what Tennessee really needed him to do. But there's no question about it that Tennessee has a superstar quarterback on their hands.
Yeah, it feels that way for sure. I mean, you're not gonna win the Heisman in the first game or anything like that. But he played.
Travis Hunter might disagree. Yeah, he tried as hard as he could on Thursday night.
But I mean, Nico played about as good as a half as you could have asked for, and it's a lot of what you said. And it's just you saw the big time arm talent, you saw his ability to make plays off script, which to me again remains the most exciting thing about him. Is phenomenal as Hendon Hooker was, and while he could make a lot of plays running, scrambling, he didn't make a whole lot of plays scrambling out of the pocket and making throws down the field.
Sure.
And Nico has the ability to do that. We didn't see a ton of 30-yard throws down the field today, but a handful of 8 to 20-yard plays when he left the pocket and made good throws the sideline. One to Ethan Davis I thought was really impressive. I think on that 2-minute drill, and it's kind of deja vu to the Iowa game when he made a really good throw to, I'm not sure who it was on the sideline. Caleb Webb, maybe?
Yeah.
Ramel Keaton, I think.
Yes, it was Keaton.
And
That's
then
right.
it was a 2-minute drill, and then he ends up taking the sack like a play or two later, and it doesn't end up meaning anything. But just a play where you see the flash of talent. So he did that. You saw him, not that Tennessee used him in the design run game. I'm sure they probably won't, with their depth issues at quarterback, they probably won't do that outside of games they feel like they need to do it to win. But you still saw him scramble. You saw him make some plays with his legs. He didn't really put the ball in harm's way. He seemed to have a really good internal clock, which is obviously something Joe Milton struggled with a year ago. So you're right. Nico certainly didn't do anything to calm down Nico mania or the noise or the excitement that's going to be around him, and for good reason. I mean, I think next week we'll learn more, but he justified a lot of the offseason hype.
I actually think he might have raised it, because
did.
people got to actually see with their own eyes. And again, you go back to that Iowa game from last year, you saw what he's able to do, but you can tell that this is just it's an evolved player. Even though we're only talking about a second-year quarterback, even though there's so much of the season that's left to unfold, you're looking at an involved quarterback from, I think, the times that we've seen him before. 22 of 28 passing, most of those incompletions came in that last couple of minutes in the second quarter. I mean, there was a time where I believe he was 19 of 20 or 19 of 21, something like that. He was really impressive through those first 20 throws. Ends up with 314 passing yards, which is a Tennessee first half program passing record. Do you remember who he beat and what the number was?
Yes, because we were told. I didn't know it.
Well,
yes.
There's a lot that's happened in these last couple hours.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Tyler Bray, 2012 Troy game. It's an all-time funny game. I believe,
yes.
Like 60 to 50 something or whatever.
Yeah.
Tennessee didn't get a stop in that game either. And 313 passing yards. So
That's
he got
right.
him by a yard.
And there was a nervous moment at one point where towards the end of the game, they came back and they said that his stat was actually corrected to 313, which would have tied him. At that point, a little bit behind the scenes, we had already written that article that he had broken the program record. Didn't want to go back and have to make any changes. Fortunately, we don't. That stat was recorrected back to 314 yards after the game. So that is what he ends up with in his first career start from Neyland Stadium right here in Knoxville. Let's flip to the other side of the ball real quick, unless there's anything else that you maybe want to mention. I guess running backs, Dylan Sampson, a little bit limited during fall camp. I think some of that was maybe just to save the wear and tear, but man, he looked like a monster out there. He looked like the player that we've known him to be, but just he's such a fun player to watch. The way that he can move, the way that he can bounce around in the field, the way that he can quickly change directions from going this way to going that way to going back this way. And he did it in the receiving game a little bit too. He only had a couple of catches, but he did go for 29 yards. He gave Nico a couple of outs when he needed that, or whoever the quarterback was throughout the game. So I really liked what he was able to do, but man, 124 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. It's a pretty good night at the office.
Pretty good start. Yeah, no, I mean, he was.
Yeah.
It was what you expect. You
Yes.
know, it was the stuff we've seen from him in the past. And he was really impressive. I think, the more interesting, maybe not fun to watch, more interesting was what's he going to look like behind him. Cam Selden does play. That's been a big question even in the last few weeks as he's been cleared to do more and more. What did he play in this game? He does play in this game. He was Tennessee's second running back in this game. I thought he played well. Did have like one little wrong read when they ran the kind of middle
That
screen
shovel
pass. He kind of turned the wrong
They
way.
did that twice in the first quarter.
Yeah. But other than that, he had a good game. And then Deshaun Bishop, who we've heard so much talk about.
So much.
Because there was so much, maybe not so much, because you knew he wasn't going to have a big role, but there was a lot of buzz about him last fall camp. And then he ends up, I want to say he was tearing his ACL, but a season-ending injury before the season happened, which didn't really end up mattering. And he wasn't going to be a top 3 running back for Tennessee any last year. But then all the buzz again this camp and all the buzz back in spring practice, he looked really good. I mean, he was Tennessee's third running back, 5 carries, 60 yards, a touchdown. He had another play in the first half when Nico was in, what I believe was like a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. Nico threw a check down to him, and then he, I don't know how much made a man miss, but took a good angle to get to the first down line and convert. So he looked really good. Those feel like definitively Tennessee's 2nd and 3rd running backs. Peyton Lewis and Khalifa Keith both got some run in the second half. It feels like they're the 4 and 5. But to me, I leave this game, you don't never know how much you're going to learn in a game like this. I leave this game feeling pretty confident that we're going to see Dylan Sampson, Cam Seldon, and Deshaun Bishop every game. And I feel like it was the second one on the field compared to third. I don't know, but I think you'll see similar snaps, similar carries, similar touches between Cam Seldon and Deshaun Bishop, with obviously Dylan Sampson leading the way in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said this down there on the field, but I completely agree with you that those two guys are kind of 2 and 3, but I don't really even think it matters for the fans or for the depth chart, kind of who is 2 and who is 3, because I do think it's going to be very situational for Tennessee. My headphones dropped out. I think it's going to be very situational for Tennessee and how they go about that. Those two guys are different types of backs that can do different things, even though they're both very skilled. So I think it's just going to come down to situationally. Who does Tennessee want to put in for certain spots? How do they want to get the most out of certain guys? But I definitely think that is sort of your three-headed monster of a running back room that we're pretty used to seeing from a Josh Heupel offense these days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in 2021, you didn't see it as much just from Tennessee didn't have the bodies.
The depth standpoint.
Yeah, but I mean,
first year.
And really in 22, you saw it more as the year came on, and Dylan Sampson got more and more accustomed with things. Obviously, he almost got Hendon Hooker killed at LSU by missing an assignment in pass blocking, but you saw him earn that trust over the course of the season. And I think you're right. And again, I think it'll be curious to see, because even last year, I mean, Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson was really good. Jabari Small, we know, is a good player, but Jalen Wright was clearly Tennessee's best running back. Most games there wasn't a huge divide in carries. Do we see that divide? Do we see that divide more in touches this year with Dylan Sampson? Because it feels like he is once again Tennessee's best running back, and I don't know if he's as good as Jalen Wright was last year. Time will tell on that one. But it feels like, even though solid what Tennessee has behind him, it doesn't feels like there's a little bit bigger drop off. So I'm going to be really curious to see how that rotation from not who's where, but just like how many drives, how many carries, how many touches each guy gets. To me, it's going to be really fascinating.
Some video game type numbers from Tennessee's offense today. Some EA College Football 25 numbers.
FCS Southeast, the Pandas.
Oh, I guess that is right.
It's a big day for them. They also played down at Ole Miss tonight. They played at North Carolina State on Thursday night.
Wow, big day
for FCS Southeast, the Pandas.
That's fantastic. Are you more of a runner or a passer in your game, your style? What works best?
If my offensive line's blocking, I'm more of a runner.
311 yards on the ground for Tennessee today. 414 yards to the passing game for Tennessee. Again, 314 came in the first half. So Tennessee puts 100 yards through the air as they kind of settle things down, put this game to bed throughout the final 2 quarters of the game. Let's flip over to the defense a little bit, which is a little bit hard to tell as I actually flip my sheet. There's nothing on the other side. A little bit hard to tell. Chattanooga did not test Tennessee's secondary very much. Like you had alluded to, I don't know if it was on this podcast or down there on the field, but there were a lot of running plays. They did not try to extend drives very much. They did not take a lot of risks throughout the game. They did start to move the ball a little bit better in the second half. I believe first drive of the third quarter, they get the ball past midfield. They use a big passing play right here in front of us to get the ball down to the red zone, and then either come up empty. No, they did nail a field goal from 43 yards.
Yes.
So
it was off of the Gaston Moore interception when they had, I believe, first and goal at the 10-yard line.
Right.
And Chattanooga didn't really move the ball, get any yards, and then missed a short field goal.
Yeah, and those were their only points of the game and only points of the second half, obviously. So It's a little bit tough to find very specific takeaways. I think, us included, but a lot of Tennessee fans watching this game, I think they wanted to see what the secondary was going to look like. We might have to wait a little bit. But
Yeah,
what we
for
did
sure.
find out is that they did rotate through their guys in this game. They did have some movement going on, whether you're talking about the safeties and the star position. Jordan Matthews and certainly got some run from the cornerback position. Ricky Gibson, the third, did not play. It looked like he might have been a little banged up or injured. So plenty of movement, plenty of opportunities to see new guys in the secondary.
Yeah.
Just maybe weren't tested that much throughout the game.
Yeah, I think you leave what we learned about the defense more about the rotations and
Yeah.
who played where. With Ricky Gibson out, I think it was a hamstring injury. You saw Jalen McMurray start over Jordan Matthews at that spot. And all three, with Jermon McCoy, Matthews, and McMurray, they all rotated. All three of those guys. Yeah, no kidding. All three of those guys played a lot. But it was interesting to, all right, McMurray's the third corner. That's how they view him, at least to start the season. It's star Christian Harrison got the start, which I think we all expected. But at least in the first half, it was alternated every single drive with Christian Harrison and Boo Carter. Rotation of linebacker, rotation of safety, about what we expected as to who were the starters, who were the backups. A little bit less rotating at safety, it felt like, than the other spots. Not that there was none. I think the second drive of the game, even Jacoby Thomas was out there, and maybe Christian Charles too.
Yes.
That'll be one, again, I'll be curious to see next week. My gut instinct is that we're still going to see 50 to 60 snaps from Will Brooks and Andre Turrentine, Tennessee's starters in that spot. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just kind of the vibe I got. So that was all interesting. And, it didn't feel like Tennessee was overwhelming defensively, in any standpoint.
Yeah.
I think only like 5 tackles for loss. A lot of short runs, but not a lot of runs just completely blown up. Only to 1 sack, 1 turnover, no interceptions. But they were very solid all day. And again, nothing that you leave feeling super negative about or anything like that.
Yeah, and sometimes just hard to get sacks when the quarterback is getting the ball out quick,
Yep.
or they're handing it off in the middle and there's just not too much to do with it except for get the ball carrier down. So certainly, I think there's still a lot of excitement on the table. Not that it just wasn't here today. You just didn't get to necessarily see it. But Tyree West was one of those players who I felt like made an impact on the game. He had one of those big booms on their quarterback early in the game. I can't remember, was it first quarter or so? He forces it was the first drive of the game. We just talked about that because
fourth play, I think, or third or fourth play.
he comes off the right edge. He just barrels into the backfield.
They already had him wrapped up, kind of.
He takes the quarterback down. Joshua Josephs picks up the fumble. So Tyree West is one of those guys who Tennessee sent to the media availabilities after the game. And I think that Josh Heupel had a fascinating quote on him, Tyree West, where he said that, look, as a guy who's been trying to find his footing in the system, just trying to kind of earn his spot as a rotational piece or obviously as a starter down the road, he's really moving into very instinctual play, right? He's now kind of flipping into that zone where he can just go out into the field and his instincts kind of take over. Instead of sitting there and thinking about, all right, where am I going to go on this player? Who's going to be here? Or if this guy goes here, I'm going to have to go here. Seems like it's just coming, again, more instinctually to him. And that's nothing but good for Tennessee because Tyree West seems to be a dangerous player when he really gets that momentum building.
Yeah, no, he was a big-time recruit, too, and a guy we've seen some of, been solid, but just, again, like the defense line as a whole, it's a lot of good guys, how many guys that are truly elite, and, I think Tyree West has that talent. He looks bigger. Obviously, all the mental stuff is extremely important, and we don't get to see a ton of that, but all that's super important, and I think, it'll be interesting. I mean, Tennessee really went 4 deep a good part of the day, at least 3 deep across the entire defensive line. They're going to have guys that are fresh there. So you may not necessarily see a ton of all these guys, but just a guy you leave game one feeling better about, and especially because it's kind of a stacked performance. It's a long time separated it, but it felt like maybe before today, his best game of his career was the Citrus Bowl against Iowa, in a game he played really well in. So certainly on a defensive line that had a solid day overall, he was one that really stood out.
Yeah, maybe I guess now that I'm thinking about it, Tyree West, Dante Thornton, 2 guys who I know Dante Thornton got hurt, but 2 guys who kind of were building something last season and who seems like have really capitalized it through the offseason. I actually missed one quick thing with the secondary real quick. Going back, Boo Carter, Christian Harrison, star position. What did you think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of hard to tell. Boo Carter, I thought was impressive on a couple of blitzes. He had the one where he had the quarterback wrapped up, and the quarterback was just able to get rid of it. And more than anything, you just kind of saw the explosiveness, the athleticism, the
stupid
speed,
athleticism
on those blitzes. That Tennessee blitzes a lot from that star spot, and they've had some pretty solid starts in Josh Heupel's first 3 seasons. It's not like they've been bad there, but it was just a different burst that I don't think a ton of guys have had, or we haven't seen a ton. So, that stood out. I know there was one completion for about 10 yards in his area. So, not a ton. And Christian Harrison, I thought, was solid. I think he had a tackle for loss as well, a play he made on a run play into backfield. So, it's a kind of a little bit of what we expected, where I think Boo Carter's a more athletic one, the higher ceiling, but Christian Harrison obviously solid, knows what to be, knows this Tennessee defense well, and it'll be curious to see how that rotation looks next week. If it stays the same, if they lean more on Harrison in a bigger game, and just what that over the course of the season, how that all develops.
Yeah, Harrison might be a guy. Just we know he's got a football bloodline, right?
Yeah.
Might just be able to kind of pick up those spots. We'll have to see, but I do like what you said about Boo Carter. You're right, just the natural athleticism. And you talk about that one play where he really went after the quarterback there. It was funny. Keenan Peely was asked after the game, just sort of, was that something that they had seen in practice? Was that something that they know was coming in practice? And Keenan Peely gave a huge smile, but didn't really say much with it. He played very coy. I think that you could tell that he knew that wrinkle was coming.
Yeah.
But I think this Tennessee defense knows that whether it's going to be Christian Harrison, whether it's going to be Boo Carter, whether it's going to be a rotation, that Boo Carter especially is one of those guys that can really attack the quarterback from that star position. He can create, sort of illusions on the defense, and then out of nowhere he barrels downhill towards the quarterback. And I think that's something that they can capitalize on, and we'll see what that rotation continues to look like. But hey, for starting a guy, or for playing one guy in Christian Harrison who did not play star during the spring, and then Boo Carter who did play star during the spring, but this was his first ever collegiate football game. I think you like what you saw from both. And again, opponent factors in, but I think you like what you see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the blitz factor with Boo Carter, it's simplified football. In that scenario, some of it you worry for him of true freshman, understanding the defense, understanding assignments. That's simple. That's a spot where you put a young player who's really, really talented, really, really athletic, in a position to have success. So I thought that made a lot of sense and was certainly encouraging. One other guy that I guess is on the defensive line technically that didn't play a ton, Jordan Ross, 5-star freshman.
I was just about to ask about him.
Yeah,
I missed his special teams play.
Yeah, I guess on the drive, I think when Chattanooga made that field goal in the first drive in the third quarter, they had 3rd and 3. Jordan Ross made a tackle for a loss. They ran his side. And then obviously the big play when he blocked the punt and returned it for a touchdown in the last 2 minutes of the game. So I don't know how big of a role he's going to have this season just because of the depth Tennessee has in front of him. But, he was really impressive. He played really well today. Hard to imagine a much better first game of your career when you're a defensive end and you score a touchdown.
Yeah, and just that Leo position for Tennessee is nasty.
Yeah, so deep.
You look down on the field, and it's, of course, James Pierce Jr. You look down on a different play, Joshua Josephs. You look down on a third play, it's Caleb Herring. You look down on a fourth play, and Jordan Ross is scoring a touchdown in the end zone. I believe he did. What was that? Did he just catch that outright? I was making my way down to the field there late in the game.
No,
what happened?
He
there?
blocked it and then picked it up.
Okay, and then scooped and scored.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right, what else? I think we got pretty much a lot of this wrapped up so far. Just a couple of the quick points that I think we missed along the way. Andre Carrick did start at left guard for Tennessee. Otherwise, the offensive line was pretty much what we expected. You had Lance Hurd.
Some rotating even in the first half. Not a ton, but some. Lance
Hurd and John Campbell Jr. on the outside. And then, of course, we know where Cooper Mays and Javante Spraggins is going to be. I'm trying to think of any other just kind of small storylines. Keenan Peely was back for Tennessee. He played his first game in Neyland Stadium today, specialist.
Yeah, Max Gilbert
that's right, Max
starts
Gilbert.
the kicker. Had a good day.
Oh, my God, he's got a leg.
Yeah, his leg's massive.
He's got a leg.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, is this new this year? They don't have the All-State nets at Tennessee? Or, they used to be, or maybe they weren't even All-State nets, but they
I hadn't even thought about that.
Well, there was no nets today. I mean,
he sent that 50 rows deep.
Yeah, the 35-yarder he sent well up, and I mean, even the 43-yarder, I think, landed above the tunnel. He doesn't take any mustard off those kicks on the extra points either. I mean, he kicks the ball like violently.
Yeah.
But he had a good day.
I love that. I love it. You kick the ball violently. Yeah. I love that.
He had a good day.
It's football.
Jackson Ross just had the one punt. Wasn't one of his best, but obviously he's the known commodity in that room. Cam Selden was the far guy back returning kicks. Peyton Lewis also returning kicks. Squirrel White was the first punt returner. We saw Jermon McCoy for 1 or 2, and then we saw Boo Carter a little bit at the end. So a little bit of a look at the pecking order. I don't think any of those teams were huge surprises. The most intrigue was probably at kicker with Max Gilbert. Josh Turbyville still did kickoffs. But a lot of turnover in Tennessee's special teams room, so you didn't know how all of that was going to look. But that's what kind of the breakdown was for game one.
Yeah. Okay. So as we kind of wrap this thing up for today, game one in the books. Tennessee defeats Chattanooga by 66 points. In some ways, it's hard to pull takeaways from this game. But in other ways, I think you can certainly find takeaways from this game. To me, I think you can absolutely tell that this is an improved team from last year for a couple of really important different reasons. Not only is the quarterback play better, we touched on Nico earlier, probably could have even talked about it a little bit more, but not only is the quarterback play better, but you have more explosive weapons for that quarterback to work with. I think that's really important. I do think that there are deeper pieces within the secondary. I think obviously you're talking about one of the top defensive lines, if not the top defensive line of the country. This is an exciting team moving forward. And yes, there's going to be some young pieces, and yes, there's going to be rotation along the way, but I really think that maybe the sky is the limit for Tennessee, but I like the athleticism they have. I like the explosiveness that they have this year. I love the quarterback play that they've had. Again, even though it's only been 2 quarters, it's against Chattanooga. You have that belief of what it's going to be.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of positivity from this game right now. Josh Heupel said that, hey, there's always going to be things to go back and improve on. And Nico said the same thing about sort of the way he ended that first half. But again, I just think that you look at big picture, NC State next week, it's going to be a big opportunity for Tennessee to kind of continue this momentum. But I think that you can absolutely tell that Tennessee could have a good opportunity to do some special things this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's hard to say for sure any of that stuff, but it's hard to imagine a game having gone any better for Tennessee.
Right.
And you feel like especially quarterback, especially the way Nico looked. He looked really, really good. And the receiver stuff, still want to see a little bit more. And obviously, Nico will have to carry it over. But he hit the ground running. And Tennessee's offense today looked better than they did at any time last year. And
yeah,
sometime you might say that's a given. Yada playing UTC. Well, Tennessee's offense had to resort to screen passes and running only against Austin Peay last year. So certainly a really good sign, and a lot of reasons for optimism heading into week 2 in Charlotte.
All right, what do you say we go ahead and get this thing wrapped up and we get out of here? Still a lot more work to do. We will have that all over at RockyTopInsider.com. Make sure you're following along with Rocky Top Insider on all different social media platforms. We are at Rocky Top Insider on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We got a ton of stuff coming out right now. You can check out the YouTube where you might be watching this already right now. Go back and look at the player interviews. Go back and look at our instant reaction from the field after the game. And, of course, go back and check out Josh Heupel's press conference as he recapped everything that he saw from this 12:45 p.m. kickoff time here in Knoxville. I am happy that it's only 6:30 and we are making our way towards the end of this workday. It is nice. We still got more football on the way that we can watch here week 1 tonight. But again, go ahead and check out everything on RockyTopInsider.com. For Ryan Shumpert, I'm Rick Butler. Thanks for watching.